Hello, welcome to the Virtual Ninja Show. My name is Heike, and today I have a special guest with me because we have a special topic. We are talking about Ignite news. Most of the good things that have been announced in the security space just at Ignite last week. And with me is Scott. Scott, thank you so much. Please introduce yourself.
Well, firstly, Heike, thanks for having me. Of course, we've been working together for years and years, and I've really wanted to join this show, so exciting to be here. Yeah, hi, I'm Scott. I look after SIEM and XDR stuff, so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about security operations teams and some of the innovations we've done for those at Ignite.
So, Scott, I mean, you're leading basically that marketing team for SIEM and XDR, and you were holding on to those news for a while, tried to keep them or kept them secret until we can get to Ignite and really do this big announcement. How does it feel now that it's out and you were part of it? And yeah, tell me a little bit about the moments at Ignite.
I actually go back a lot more than just the news. There's a single PowerPoint slide that I drew for the engineering leaders more than 2 years ago. That was a block diagram that had Defender and Sentinel and showed opportunities to really consolidate capabilities and to build a unified security operations platform. And so to be able to kind of influence it to some degree, obviously lots of clever engineering people own the plans, the direction, and then to work through all the work involved in helping people get there and finally launch it. Very exciting. So it's, as you know, we've been on this journey for more than 5 years to consolidate many security tools into what is now a unified security operations platform. And this was just that next logical step, having built everything kind of endpoint, email, etc., into XDR land, to take SIEM and XDR together in a unified platform. So it's been a really long journey, actually, but a really exciting journey. And while I think it's long, I mean, this is revolutionary stuff. Nobody else is doing this in the market today.
But you're already talking about it and we didn't even touch it yet. So
I know,
yes,
you're like, what's he talking about?
One of the big announcements was really bringing SIEM and XDR together. So what does that mean? What is coming together and where does it come from and where does it go and what can people now do better with it?
Yeah, great. So, I mean, maybe starting a little bit also at the beginning, a couple of years ago, there were these vendors who said we're SIEM vendors, or these vendors who said they were XDR vendors. And then the two sets of vendors kind of stood up against each other, Western style, and decided that the other vendor shouldn't exist. Microsoft looked at it and said, you know what, customers need these SIEM type capabilities. You need the flexibility to be able to build all the analytics rules you want. You need to be able to retain data for a long period of time. You need to be able to get inputs from all of the systems in your enterprise with hundreds and hundreds of connectors. That's a very valid use case that isn't going to go away anytime soon. And on the other hand, you want the value of XDR capabilities. You want this ability to go deep on a specific resource because it's an endpoint and the alerts of the endpoint and what matters and what doesn't matter. You want the ability to do things like attack disruption with automatic AI, which really only work if you have a really good understanding of the resources that you're manipulating, because you can also remediate if the specific technology that you're taking action against. So it isn't about one or the other, it's about both. And so that's been our message for a number of years now, is that both are important. But in the same time, we've had leading in that space, we've had some seams in terms of how you do things. And so the goal is obviously then to remove those seams. And that's what bringing SIEM and XDR together is all about, is providing the most efficient experience for security operations professionals, because you have all contained in a single portal experience, entirely coherent system. And so in the past, if you were using I'll pick on some competitors, but if you were using a CrowdStrike and a Proofpoint and a Splunk, you had 3 different tools with 3 different incident numbers, with 3 different ways of presenting data. And it was pretty hard to figure it all out. And so security professionals spend a lot of time in their heads kind of working out the links between all these tools. And there's just no time to do that anymore. And so bringing that all together, so it's, in a single incident, has all that information and it's in a single experience, just that one change, and we'll talk about others, I'm sure, is just a huge benefit for folks.
So it means that from Sentinel, events, incidents are now also in the Microsoft 365 Defender portal, security portal. I don't know, like other things. And this is the first step of moving features, workloads, and there will be more, or what's the journey here a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, just first to unpack what we did, the first thing to think about is that the full Sentinel experience, all of it, now exists in the Defender portal. And so you get everything that you got in Sentinel in the past in the Defender portal. That's kind of step one, which hence you brought all SIEM and XDR together. With that, we also made a number of other changes. So we also enabled a unified incidents queue. And so you don't have, a Sentinel incident queue and a Defender incident queue. You have one, which is the way you want to operate. We also enabled you to hunt over Sentinel data as well as we'll get to the name change, but Microsoft 365 Defender data for the old name, all in a single query, also making it super more efficient. So these things are just, if I go back to the customer example beforehand, if you're using Splunk and you're using CrowdStrike, you can't do that. You can't search over your CrowdStrike data in CrowdStrike and your Splunk data in Splunk all at the same time. But it's just one of the benefits of the overall platform.
Yeah. And I think this is right now in a limited preview. So not everybody can now jump out, unfortunately, and get the hands dirty. But there will be some time where it's like tested, made, I don't know, some last changes. And then we get it out, I don't know, early next year or sometime. And then other people can also get the hands dirty.
Yeah, that's right. So it's today or at Ignite available for early adopter customers, measured in hundreds. And, we have the field working to nominate that set of customers. We'll continue to scale capacity and customers as we go. We don't have a specific date for public preview, but, spring-ish, if you want to think about public preview, seems like a reasonable place to go. But yeah, that's the timing pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. And then still the Azure portal. So people, if they want to go and work there, just because they're right now still used to it and need to get used to the new way of doing it, they can still go there. And yeah, I think this is just some of the comments or questions that we get. No, you can still go to the Azure portal. Talking about the Azure portal, there is also MDC signals, Defender for Cloud signals now coming into that new unified security operations platform. What is that about, Scott?
Yeah, so actually, can I get that in a minute? And just before we get to MDC, I do want to hit a couple of points that you made. 100%, this is not a migration. For customers that are using Sentinel, you go through a little wizard that points your workspace to the new portal, and it just works. It just works, and the Azure portal continues to work. There's also no business model changes here. So Sentinel, you still buy the normal Sentinel way as you do Microsoft 365 Defender, although I'll come to the name change there. So that's exciting. And then just one more before I get to MDC, because I want to make sure we capture it. AI is a huge part of this announcement too. Security Copilot, late last month, we announced that Security Copilot, of course, is embedded inside Microsoft 365 Defender. It's also a considerable, advantage here in the unified security operations platform. So it now works in Sentinel as well as Defender. So you get SIEM, you get XDR, you get AI. Anyway, to your MD.
This is no. This is amazing. I mean, I'm a huge Security Copilot fan. I think as many others as well. When they finally can also get their hands on it, but now having the ability to, use Security Copilot with all this additional data that comes in, like a SIEM has third-party signals from all over the place, that you can also query and include in your question. Like this is just huge. Awesome. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. No, honestly, it's amazing productivity. Ultimately, we're going to defend at machine speed, and then we're going to get defenders to be delighted with experiences they've just never had before in terms of the consolidation of data. Not simplifying things because there's a lot of complexity in security, but giving security folks exactly the right information they needed every time. So, both of those are important. Anyway, you're asking me about MDC. So, MDC, one of the biggest requests we've had there is to put for customers who are purchasing the XDR and Defender for Cloud, to bring the MDC signal into Microsoft 365 Defender. And so we're also doing that. So the Defender for Cloud signal is now included in the unified incident queue if you purchased Defender for Cloud and E5 or similar SKUs. And so that's really exciting at the XDR layer. Also, it doesn't make any sense at that point. I know people love it when I rename things. I'm guilty for the majority of the Defender names if people didn't know that I read memes on the internet. So keep the feedback coming. But this one really just didn't make any sense to call Defender 365 anymore when it's got all of the GCP and AWS and Azure signal in it. So we've been calling Defender 365 our XDR for a long period of time now. And the brand is formally updating to that. So Microsoft Defender 365 is now Microsoft Defender XDR.
I was hoping that we will just close that episode with a new name, because then I'm not guilty when I still say Microsoft 365 Defender. It's so into our, speeches. But yes, I like the name Microsoft Defender XDR. I think makes total sense. So I think we talked about this one big one, which was really bringing the SIEM and the XDR together in the Unified Security Operations Platform, plus, of course, the MDC signals, the new name, and still being in the Microsoft Defender XDR portal. There's also that new attack disruption for SAP. What is that about, Scott?
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, this notion of SIEM or SIEM versus XDR doesn't make any sense. It's like you take the best value of both and you give it to customers. And so in XDR, of course, we have attack disruption where you can stop a ransomware. Perhaps it captures 3 or 4 or 5 PCs, but you turn off HiKey's account if you've now been captured by a bad actor. And you could do that at a device level or an identity level. But it turns out you also may have access to other systems. So, for example, you might be somebody who works on an SAP system. And wouldn't it be cool if we could automatically turn off your SAP account to pretend, financial fraud in that case? Because often, the keys to the kingdom are in SAP, and if attacker gets in there. And that involves working on a quote-unquote third-party adapter or connector. So working on a line of business system that isn't, Active Directory or Defender for Endpoint Controlled. And so we have demonstrated at Ignite exactly that, which is extending attack disruption so that your user account in Active Directory or Entra is turned off and your device is turned off. But then in addition, your SAP account is disabled. And this is just one example. Over time, we will likely add, but we haven't committed to, a number of other of these potentially line of business systems as an example where we take automatic action on the customer's behalf, all on by default, no playbooks required, no work required on the customer.
Thank you. And actually, I hopped to this topic and I wanted to first talk more about Security Copilot, because that wasn't just the only announcement. You even presented in the keynote all the big news where Security Copilot can be found now as well. So tell us.
Yeah, so Security Copilot obviously is just a tremendous, it's both a productivity thing, but it also enables better security, both of those things. And so, we demonstrated the SOC scenario, including this SAP. Shara did it in the keynote. Very, very exciting with, classic script analysis and orchestration and a bunch of things. But beyond that, we recognize that Security Copilot is far useful for a far broader set of scenarios than just, the world I live in, the SOC world. And so we just showed a glimpse of some of the new capabilities that are coming in a number of areas. So the first of which was Entra, where we talked about, helping a customer who had an identity issue. They'd been blocked by MFA, and the work that Security Copilot can do to get that identity admin the information they need to more quickly respond and predict in advance. We then traversed to Intune and talked about what if analysis. You're about to roll out a policy. Unfortunately, sometimes when policies get rolled out to PC fleets, stuff breaks. And so you can actually use Copilot to do what if analysis, aggregating a tremendous amount of data together to find, a potentially conflicting policy. So you can go talk to the marketing team in this case and tell them to do something different before you go deploy it. And then similarly, we extended even further to Purview. So it was very shock and awe, right? All these huge announcements where we're talking about compliance scenarios. And so data security and how Copilot can help you with data security alerts and give you the rich context you need, or how it can help with IRM or even meeting transcripts that might have policy violations in them. Things like stock trading violation, I think, is the example that we show. Can all be found with Security Copilot traversing meeting scripts and bringing it up. So this Security Copilot is going to be big one day. I mean, it is just so exciting.
So Scott, those are all embedded experiences in Microsoft Entra ID, Purview, and Intune. So the standalone or like the immerse experience can, of course, also talk with the products and get signals from these products. But the big announcement was here as well to have now the experience in the products.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, for our early adopter customers, a standalone's cool for sure, but our customers want to see Security Copilot where their main workflows are. If you're a SOC analyst, you want to see it in the Unified Security Operations Platform or the Defender portal. You want to see it in the Intra portal. You want to see it in the Purview portal. And 100%, these are all embedded within the portals that everybody uses today and the workflows that everybody uses today, which just makes it so much easier to take advantage of this capability.
Yeah. And then I don't even know, Scott, if it was announcement now at Ignite, but I know it was huge last week, which is GA for our settings management, talking about Intune. I did a wonderful episode, actually, too, with Dan Levy, who is the PM on that feature. And we talked about, of course, there's more coming when it comes GA. Now is the time, right? So this was big.
Yeah, exactly. No, settings management has been a long time coming. We got a ton of customer feedback on the need to simplify the endpoint setup and configuration experience, both in terms of, not requiring Intune portal experience. So you can just do it all in the Defender portal, or simplifying the number of URLs that you need to have for firewall purposes. For Mac and for Linux, not requiring third-party tools. There was just a real opportunity for us to clean this up and just make an experience to delight customers. And so, we've added additional policy support from when we were in preview to GA to, make sure the vast majority of all the policies and everything work. But I could not be more excited because it's so much simpler to set up and use Defender for Endpoint. Honestly, it's the experience that customers deserve. And so if they've seen it beforehand, you really want to see it now. It's just night and day different on complexity for sure.
Yes. So, and then we have another big announcement for Microsoft Defender XDR. I'm getting there, right? So it's not too bad. Which I also know we discussed this long time ago, if we should do it, should not do it, but now we are there and it's about deception. So for everyone who doesn't know what it is and what it does, Scott, help us.
Yeah, deception. It's never a good thing, is it, to deceive people? But if the person you're deceiving is somebody trying to take over your PC, that's okay. And so deception in this case is all about really capturing great security signal from bad actors who are attacking your endpoint. And so it creates the illusion to an attacker that this is a very open endpoint. And so the attacker comes in, grabs onto the endpoint, and in so doing does all the same things that they would normally do, try and run Mimikatz and all the usual drama, and it all seems to work. But instead of capturing perhaps, my credentials, they don't. They get caught because we've set up a false set of assets effectively that allures, honeypots is a term that's often used in identity land for something very similar to this. And so this is just incredible in terms of finding attackers earlier, because attackers, as you know, go for the lowest hanging fruit. And if they see a low hanging fruit, they'll pick up on it. So This is great for security defenders to get signal earlier so that they can catch that ransomware earlier. But it's also incredibly important for our AI and our attack disruption. Because if we use these deception techniques with our attack disruption, now our attack disruption has a higher fidelity signal so that it can act faster. And, the balance on AI on acting on behalf of the customer is today we take a somewhat conservative approach to that because, you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to turn off the CEO's PC and be wrong about it. You want to have a high level of confidence. So the more signal that you can get earlier, the more confidence you have earlier, the more that you can turn things off earlier. So this is a huge feature in terms of just for defenders itself, but it's actually way cooler when combined with attack disruption and things moving at machine speed.
And this is GA preview. What's the status right now?
It's in preview. So the first time, and this is in public preview as far as I know. Actually, it's a really good question. If it isn't, let me know.
Okay, and then it's just there, right? There's nothing someone needs to buy or something.
It's included in Defender for Endpoint. So if you've got Endpoint P2, you've got it, and go learn to set it up. Paul did a demo in Rob's keynote at Ignite. If you want to check it out there, and there are blogs and so on the topic as well.
Wow. So I think the major announcement, so from at least my major announcement, I know there's other people that focus on other areas and they find other announcements maybe much more interesting.
These are the best ones.
See, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. But I think we want to touch on two more, looking into the Sentinel world, and then again a little bit in the Defender for Cloud world. Yeah. So what was your favorite announcement for Sentinel?
Well, I mean, my favorite one was the unified SOC portal, but in terms of customer friendly, you think a lot of these SIEM vendors, including us, get paid on how much data you ingest. And so, not many vendors, actually none I know of, really help the customer optimize how much data that you ingest. But we looked at, common customer feedback from Sentinel was, now that we have this unlimited data store in Sentinel compared to what we used to have on premises, we put in all this data, and we probably would love some guidance because maybe we, overdid it. And so we added in Sentinel these SOC optimization features. There's a number of things these will do over time, but the first thing that they do is actually cost management effectively. They'll highlight specific tables in Sentinel that appear to us to not have a whole lot of security value. You need to make a judgment call on that, obviously, because it maybe you just ran it in a short period of time. But fundamentally, tables that aren't used very often, that have a bunch of security data in it, we highlight it for you to make a decision on whether you want the comfort of continuing to ingest that, or if you're under budget pressure, you have the option, of course, to stop doing that. And we would suggest that has the, based on our view today, lowest security value. We also do a second thing that's pretty cool, which is there's a set of tables that you perhaps don't have the right analytics rules on top of. So you're collecting the data, but you're not necessarily getting all the security value out of it. And so this will really enable you. In fact, you should take all these recommendations would be my feedback on this one. This is like go turn on security value on stuff that you're already ingesting by turning on analytics rules. So I think that's super cool. You'll see us add over time even more of these kind of guide, the security copilot guides an incident in real time, and SOC optimization is more on the admin side in terms of guiding what we can do to help drive a more efficient system from a cost perspective or from a signal perspective.
This sounds cool. So I can go back in this analyzer and then again see maybe even what I deleted, the tables that I didn't continue to include, so they're not lost, right? So I can still get them back if I made a wrong decision of excluding them.
Well, I mean, you can always turn on the data. It's once again, it's a cost trade-off. So if you want to retain all of the data in the world for a period of time, I'd be delighted. I get paid. You're happy. If you are not as well funded as that, then you'll make trade-off decisions. Maybe network flow logs is the thing that has lower security value, and so you've decided to not save. I'm not recommending every customer does that, but it's an example. So once again, it's always a balance for customers, and every customer has a different kind of place on the thermometer where they want to make sure they get all the data, and there's a cost associated with that, or they're willing to set the dial in a slightly different place. But when they do, they want to be informed of what's the best security posture they'll have when they do that. And that's where we try and help.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then let's go to our last news announcement at Ignite, Defender for Cloud.
Actually, not Defender for Cloud, but Defender for Cloud apps. There you go.
Oh,
I can do better on the branding of that one. You want to give me branding feedback? That would be one that I can tell you a backstory on that one sometime over a beer. But anyway, Defender for Cloud apps, super exciting for me. And once again, I'll convince you it's exciting. But we spend a lot of time talking about using AI to help defenders secure. That's all of what Copilot's doing in the context of inside the unified security operations platform with Sentinel and with Defender. But obviously, securing AI is another class of things where you have a set of applications that are using LLM models. And, famously about 3 or 4 months ago, I think Apple said nobody could use LLM models inside Apple. And that didn't work. It just doesn't work. But on the other hand, security teams do need visibility into which applications do have LLMs going on, and then provide access control and governance around that. And so Defender for Cloud apps, of course, has been an access broker for a long period of time. And taking those capabilities and extending them, we've added now the ability to control access and governance to up to 400. And the number will grow as the number of apps grow. It's crazy how fast this LLM thing's going. Up to 400 apps you can go ahead and get discovery, visibility, and access control under, which is a super important ask. Yeah.
Also very good. There was a lot. And we are doing a couple of deep dives, Ninja episodes. I think we are talking, of course, Security Copilot. We will have a deeper look into the SIEM and XDR, new unified security operations platform with the MDC signals coming in, deception. So there is a few deeper dives that we are doing. But everyone who couldn't attend Ignite, Scott, they can all still go back to the Ignite website and sign in, and then basically watch the keynote, watch the breakout sessions. You did a breakout session as well?
Yeah, I did a breakout session on Sentinel, and I'm not going to talk about. Am I allowed to talk about competitive webinars? I'm just teasing, and there's some Microsoft Mechanics content too on Copilot and the unified SOC. So you should be able to get multiple views to it for sure. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, there is a lot of resources out there for everyone who wants to learn more. And yeah, Scott, thank you so much for being my guest on this special Ignite episode. I hope I will ask you back again when there is maybe the next Ignite or any other big event where we do a lot of announcements. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Talk soon.